Hi, everybody, and welcome to this latest webinar, which will focus on collaboration within projectteam.com and how you can use projectteam.com to collaborate not only with your internal project stakeholders, but your external parties as well, whether you are an owner managing CM firms and contractors, et cetera. Maybe you are the GC and you're working with your subs and your suppliers, et cetera. Lots of ways to collaborate within projectteam.com through forms, files, comments, and a bunch more, and that's what we're going to cover today. So the first piece here is, what is a collaboration system? Obviously, in construction, there's a lot that goes on a daily basis. We're building complex infrastructure projects, and there are a lot of forms and inspections and data that's passing through every day. Every piece of data that we have across our desk could impact the schedule or the budget, and all of those reasons are why collaboration is so important. So a collaboration system is intended to share forms, files, documents, photos in one spot. A lot of people would say that a project collaboration system, or a project management system in some cases, is your single source of truth on projects. What does that mean? That means that you know that you can go to one spot, projectteam.com, to understand how the project is going. What are the RFIs? What's the status of my submittals? Are there any recent files that I need to approve? Are my contracts in order? Whatever that might be, you have one spot to kind of check that out. The other piece of a collaboration system is the ability to receive and provide real-time feedback to the different project stakeholders that you have. So there are a lot of ways, in traditional ways, to provide communication to your stakeholders. A traditional one would be phone calls or email. A collaboration system is going to add to that and even replace some of that conversation in some ways. And there are some real benefits of doing that within a standardized system versus some of those, more traditional methods. And then the other nice thing about the system is that you can view, track, downloads, and activity per user if you want to. So what I'm going to do a little bit later on in this presentation is pull up two different screens, user A and user B, and we're going to interact together, and we're going to see all the ways that we can collaborate, and also the different views and access that we have is going to be based on the permissions that we've set up within our projects. So I mentioned traditional collaboration methods, phone calls or emails, and I want to kind of focus on emails here. In most cases, people that come to Project Team from a sales side, hey, we're looking for a new system, about half of those people are coming from an existing solution, and then half of them are coming from, we still use email and Word and Excel, and that's how we manage our projects. There's a lot of issues with managing in this way, and I want to kind of go through some of those. The first one is a lack of organization, primarily in email. If I'm using email, certainly I could set up subfolders, but I'm getting a ton of different types of emails every day within my email inbox. That could be thousands of emails coming to me every day, everything from invitations to a birthday party, to specific things on project 1, maybe specific items on project 2, internal business emails. Everything is kind of jammed together in one common log, if you will, which makes it hard to find. So a lot of people are going to say, well, in that case, I have to set up folders. But then a lot of times those folders are unique to you. Does that give you confidence that others within your organization are seeing the information that you're sending and being able to reply to that? What indication do you have that if I send information to, let's say, a contractor, have they read that email? Are they getting ready to reply? What's the status of that? Do I need to send now another email? Those type of things are the issues with mostly managing your projects through something like email. The second piece is no single source of truth. This goes to my first slide. I can't rely on email to have every answer. Certainly somewhere in the email might be an answer, but it's going to take a while to be able to identify that and pull that out. once I do find that, where do I put it? Do I favorite that email, or what's going on there? So lots of issues with just managing in that way. The other problem that many will have is a limitation on the email file sizes. So in construction, we're working with a lot of large files, whether that's video files, drone photo files, things like that. A lot of times you're going to have an issue trying to send that through email, so you need some kind of file transfer system, and that's where a project collaboration system comes in as well. The never-ending threads, of course, in email, you can reply all. If you send something to a reply all, a lot of times people are getting things that they don't necessarily care about. That's a waste of their time. You want a place that is just a kind of a more efficient way to manage those business processes. And then I think the most important one is the reporting lack of reporting that you have with something like email. Reports and dashboards in many ways are going to be the most important thing that you have on your project. Any system, Word, Excel, email, allows you to type information into that system and then send it off or track it in some way. The problem with that is you're not getting any business insight or lessons learned based on that data. That's where those reports and dashboards come through, and that's kind of why you need a system that has a very strong reporting and dashboarding tool. You want to be able to break up the data that's coming over to you into different pieces, group that data, sort that data, filter that data in different ways that make the most sense for whatever your business requirement is, and then be able to report or dashboard on that in a very easy way, and then also be able to save that report and run it multiple times. I don't want to have to create a report every time I want to run it, which is just difficult to do. So what we look at is every day we are talking with clients, customers that are looking at other systems as well. So let's take a look at the issue with other platforms. In a traditional platform, which is more of a project management platform instead of a project collaboration platform, you have a lot of issues. The first one is there is a single owner of the data in the platform. Okay, this means that, okay, I've got this guy here may be the owner, and then everybody else on the project is now logging into that organization's system to enter data. At first glance, that seems like, of course, that's totally fine. The problem is that also means that everyone that's doing that is also entering that data again in another system, which is duplicating all of the effort that you would need on a project. Like I mentioned in the beginning, construction projects obviously are very complex or can be very complex. And the time and materials that it takes to complete a project is important. So duplicating everything that you do into another system is a huge drag on your time, which is a major issue that we see in why people migrate or move to something like projectteam.com versus some of the old legacy platforms. If we look at the issues with some of that or call out some of those, number one, the system owner in this case is responsible for all external users. What does that mean? That means I have to pay for them, which is a high cost. It means I have to train them, I have to support them. Now you're looking at, and that's why in a lot of cases when you talk to organizations from a legacy platform, there's a role within that platform that says, hey, I am the System X administrator. That is my entire role. That's all I do all day is administer the project. We see that as an issue because now you're taking up not only the cost of all the software and system costs, but now you're also paying people for that role, which is an issue. So you're having high costs. You're also having frustrated users because now, like shown in the diagram, I have to duplicate everything that I do into another system. The issue that arises for those external users is, number one, they have to duplicate the data. And why do they have to do that? Because there's the risk of losing all access to the data at any point. In a collaboration environment, you want people to feel comfortable to add data into it, which brings you better data for your project, and not have to worry about people taking data away or cutting off. In construction, there's obviously a lot of issues and arguments and even things that get up to legal in a lot of cases. And the person with the most notes, the most information, typically wins the argument. So you need a system that you can feel very comfortable with, that the information is up to date, it's real time, and it's also accurate. When we look at projectteam.com, we take a little bit of a different approach. Project Team is a truly collaborative system. That means that an owner, let's say, or a system buyer can purchase the system, user subscriptions for the system, and then can share information to external parties. Those external parties 100% have the option then to log into the system. They can even have equal ownership of the data that they produce and add to the system, so that they eliminate that need for double entry. So there's lots of benefits to a collaboration system. First of all, for that owner company, a lower total cost of ownership. You're not paying for those free collaborators, as some would say. You're just paying for your internal people. Everybody else can join to your project based on access that they want. Those people in projectteam.com have the opportunity to sign up on their own. If they want to create their own projects and use the system for their own things outside of that original connection, they certainly can, and that is going to help drive their cost down as well. Having everybody in one common platform is going to provide more reliable and real-time data. I don't have to wait for somebody to put their information on system A and then bring it over to system B. It's all in just one common system. I see everything in real time. The benefits for those external users are the ownership that I talked about, and then the complete elimination of that double entry. Now everything is in one platform. Everybody on the project, from the owner to the CM to the contractors to the subcontractors, can log into one single source of truth, know it's there. If it's not there, they can add it and they can share that accordingly. So when we talk about collaboration, the other piece of that is also about privacy. In some cases, you might say, it's great to have a system that I can add information to. However, I don't want that information all the time going to everybody else that's connected on my project. That's going to defeat some of the collaboration piece, because now my internal users are going to be scared to put data in there because I'm worried it's going to get out. So there's a kind of a fine line between collaboration and data privacy, and I want to kind of go through a couple things that projectteam.com does to kind of eliminate some of that. The first item here is, let's say I'm filling out a requirements document. I want to be able to share information or share forms with other companies, which is totally doable in most applications. However, the other piece of that is they should only see forms that they have access to. So I might have access to, let's talk about change orders or something. I might have access to 100 change orders on my project. My contractor, I only want him or her to have access to the 10, 15 change orders that they are responsible for. Okay, so in that case, I have 100 and they have 15. Even though we both have access to change orders, there's a kind of a fine line between what records or forms within that form type that they have access to. The second piece is, I want to be able to update fields on shared forms. So let's say a contractor creates an RFI and shares that over to me. Let's say I'm an architect. I'm working in projectteam.com. Someone creates an RFI, shares it over. Now I need to provide an answer. But based on my lessons learned and my own general trying to keep up with making my business better, I might want to put something in there called a reason for RFI. Maybe I forgot that on a drawing or something like that. That is certainly something that I want to be able to track to get myself better throughout my projects, but I don't necessarily want my contractor to know that it's my fault and I forgot that in the drawing. So in that case, I might want to be able to update fields on a form, but I also want to be able to keep internal fields private to just myself or just certain people within my organization. And then finally, in true collaboration form, I want to be able to share notes or comments to certain people. In Project Team, you can always, on every form, there's a little comment section where I can go in there and type comments. However, there's some comments that I'm only going to want to keep private to individual users. So I'll talk about how you can do that through the commenting tools within Project Team. So let's say that we're both on an RFI, as the case I used earlier. I might have something specific to somebody else at my company. Hey, did we get an answer here yet? Hey, did we add an attachment, etc. I don't want everybody to see that I'm having that conversation. I just want to make that a private comment. I can certainly do that in the system. So in summary here, there's a lot that you can do from a collaboration platform side. However, you're also looking for something that gives you the privacy to be confident that you and your users can add the data into the system. So there's a little bit of a fine line there, and I think this slide kind of outlines some of that. So what are we going to be doing in Project Team today? This isn't going to be the longest webinar. I just want to kind of take a different approach to some of the webinars I've done previously in the year so far and talk about how a company can collaborate with another company. So in previous ones, I've really done some training webinars, reports, dashboards, budgets, change orders, etc. This is really going to be a lot about collaboration. When I log into the system, I'm actually going to have two screens up on my view here. On the left-hand side, I'm going to have a contractor. So I've made my logo in the system yellow to kind of indicate that in a nice way. But I'm going to be logging in as a contractor. On the other side, I'm going to be logging in as a subcontractor. This could be any two different parties on the project. I'm just using these two examples, but you could be an owner or an architect or a construction management firm, whatever. But this is how I'm going to go. What I want to show when I go in here is I'm working as two different people. One as myself, Josh, one as another person, Walt. What do those people see on the same project? What if we're sharing information to each other? What do those people see on the same exact form? And those are the things we'll kind of explore. So let me go in here and open up my two different forms. On the left-hand side, like I'm showing here, I've got two different browsers open. One is Google Chrome, and you can see myself, Josh, is on the left-hand side. On the right side, we have Firefox, and that is Walt from a different company. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the project on each side. So I'll just jump in to this webinar demo project that we set up a few webinars ago. The first thing that I see is a difference in the form types that I have access to, but also the setup of my home page. So in Project Team, there's a difference between system forms and custom forms. You can go in and set up any custom forms that you want. We have industry standard forms like RFIs, submittals, change orders, etc. But you might have a specific type of inspection form or ASI or something like that that you want to be able to track that we don't provide out of the box because it might be more unique to your organization, and you can set those things up. In these two views so far, I see a couple different things. On the left-hand side, I can set up my favorite forms, change orders down to submittals, and I can jump into any of these different logs. On the right-hand side, my contractor, they can also set up their favorites. In this case, they have one favorite, which is just RFIs. Underneath of that, on this project homepage, we can also see forms that have been created. I might be working in budgets, RFIs, and a lot more. My contractor, my subcontractor, is just going to be seeing the things that they have access to. In this case, the only thing that exists on this project, it's the same exact project for both of these people, is just an RFI on this subcontractor side. If I jump into a form type, so I've got RFIs here, and it's the same that they have access to, so I'm going to say RFIs. In this case, now I see an RFI number, a subject, a created on, and some other information. If my subcontractor jumps into RFIs, they have that same information for some of the data. So here I've got subject and created on only for this bus pad design standards, which is somewhere down here. It's actually RFI number 1. Okay. So you can see my view of RFIs on the same exact project is very different than my subcontractor's view. As the contractor here, I can also go in here and configure my log. I've got a bunch of different fields available to me to add to my log based on my access. I might say I want to add the due date field and save that. My log view is going to refresh to show that due date field, and it does not affect my subcontractor. The subcontractor also, because we want them to have a very positive experience, especially working with you in the system, to be able to go in here and configure their log in whatever way that they want to see it based on the fields that they have access to. Right now, however, they only have access to a question and an answer besides that subject field. So they have no ability at this point to add things like our official RFI number, due date, etc. Okay, because of the field access that we've set up. The next thing that I want to do is I want to jump in. Let's jump into that RFI number 1, where I could have just resorted this log view to put number 1 at the top. Before I go in there, I guess, the other thing that you'll see is this little, in your logs, you'll always have this little indication of which or what number of users have access to the information. So in this case, I can click on this and see that Josh from Project Team and Walt from Superior Subcontracting both have access to this information. Okay, it's the same view over here. As Walt, I can also see that myself, Walt, and Josh have access to that. The other nice thing that you can do is in your log, you might also share information in a bulk fashion. So I can say I want to share number 3 and number 4. Go ahead and share that over to Walt, or choose any grouping to share it to. Okay, now I've shared that. If Walt refreshes his log, now he's got access to 3 RFIs. Each of those is shared to 2 people at this case, because just me and Walt are on the project. You might have 100 people on your project, but this is a simplified example. So you can see it's very easy to go ahead and share that information, and I'll just refresh the screen to show those updated numbers over here as well. So if I look at here, there's a couple of them, or 3 of them that have 2. In your log view, another great way to understand who has access to what is to go in here and say view shared with. In this case, I can choose any other users from the project and say view, and it's going to refresh the screen and show me, or gray out things that they don't have access to, but show me a little yes icon to things that they do. So I can very quickly here see that Walt, in this case, which is indicated up here, has access to RFI number 1, 3, and 4, but doesn't have access to any of these other RFIs in the project. And so as you're sharing information on, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. Oops, I should have shared number 2. I can go ahead and click on that and then share that over to Walt. Okay, now that thing changes to a yes. Okay, so as we're sharing, there might be some things that I want to share, some things that I want to keep private, but you can very easily see through different indications on your logs how that would look. I can always reset my log now to get back to my standard view and refresh as Walt. Along the way here, Walt might be receiving email notifications based on the sharing or the updates of the fields that we're doing, but I just wanted to mention that because I'm not going to go into email in this case. All right, so let's go into a form. So we've looked at the logs here and how to share information between the logs. What if I go into a form? So I'll click on that bus pad design standards, and same thing, I'm going to click on bus pad design standards. You'll see here that all of this information is always the same. This is the metadata of this view, but depending on my role or my access between contractor and subcontractor, or whatever 2 roles that you have, it's going to be kind of a different scene here. So on the left-hand side, if I scroll down just to see the top of that details area, and I'll do the same thing here, you'll notice that I have access to a lot more field data. RFI number, subject, question, requested by, anything else that my organization wants to track. Maybe this is also, some of this important to share over to Walt, which you can do. Maybe it's not, so that's why I'm not sharing it. Okay. So a key thing here is, even though we're interacting with the same data, so if Walt goes in here and says bus pad design standards for main building or something, and save that. Now, if Josh gets an email based on that update, or if he just refreshes the screen, I see that immediately. Okay, so these 2 views between my contractor, subcontractor are the same exact views. We're collaborating on the same exact data. However, the field access that we have might be slightly different. Thing that I want to show really quickly here is I'm going to customize my form, my RFI form, just a little bit and see how that affects Walt. So I can go into here and say I want to customize my form fields as the contractor. Let's say I've got this official RFI number. I actually do want to edit this. Go to field access and say that Walt should be able to see that, but I don't want him editing that, okay? Because we might have meetings, I might be referencing that RFI number. He might be submitting me a lot of things. Half of them become official RFIs, half of them don't. So I want him to be able to see that, but only have read access to that. So I'll go ahead and save it. The other thing that I want to let Walt have access to is maybe the requested by. Okay, so this I'm going to say here that Walt actually should have read-write access to this information. I'm doing this at the individual user level. You could also, it's probably more recommended to do this at the group level so that you can add people to and from groups. But I can go ahead and save that now. Just by me doing that, if Walt refreshes his screen, you'll notice that now he has 2 additional fields, an RFI number and a requested by field there for him. And I'm going to go ahead and just look at this together. Okay, so now when we're looking at our forms, we're seeing a little bit more of the same data, but still different depending on our role within the project. If he goes ahead and creates a new RFI, you'll notice that he cannot edit the RFI number field, but he could go in here and change information that I've given him access to do that. So I'll just say, well, I got 2 Joshes in there because it's different, but I'll just say save there. Okay, so I've got that information showing up, that's working together, and I can edit or view the information that I want those people to see. All right, what happens if I create a brand new RFI? So if I go back to the RFI log for Walt, maybe he wants to create a brand new RFI. Here's going to say RFI, or let's say new RFI 001 just for demo purposes, and I'll just say this is a test. Okay. At this point, I can save and share as Walt. I can share that to anybody that I'm connected to. So I'm going to go ahead and share that to Josh. I can force notify Josh, which will drive an email notification, or I can just share it. In this case, since I'm not checking on emails, I'll just go ahead and share that. So I've created this brand new RFI as Walt. If I go back to the RFI log as Josh, go to my standard view, now I have that new RFI showing up in my log. If Josh looks at this, he now sees all of the data that Walt filled out, plus any additional fields that he might want to view. So as the contractor, or Josh in this case, maybe I just received this RFI, I can go here and edit this. I can say the RFI number actually should be 024, and this could have been an auto number, which you could set up. The due date here is going to be, let's say, the 15th, based on what I know and my resource here. So I can say date requested was today's date, so I'll just say the 7th. The category, the cost impact, I'm not sure about, so I'm just going to save that. Okay, so now I've received the RFI, edited some fields. What happens next? In Project Team, we've focused a lot on these top couple panels. There is a lot or a lot of other panels. I could workflow, which I will do in a second. I could drag and drop attachments, which is fine, assign action items, but I kind of want to focus on this activity side. So as you know, Walt created an RFI, shared that over to me. I viewed the RFI, and then I edited some fields. So if I click on the activity, you'll see that full activity now showing up. So there's a full audit history of everything that happens. I do want to note, though, that the activity is based on access. So Walt created it, shared it to Josh, and then Josh showed the RFI number, date requested, and due dates. If Walt, who does not have access to the due date field or date requested field, but does have access to the RFI number field, goes down to check his activity, it'll show just the activity that he has access to. Okay, so he's not kind of getting around the system to see, oh, I see Josh also has access to things. He's only going to see ever the information that he's been given permission to. Even though he has read-only access to RFI number, he still has access to that. So when he goes through his activity, he can see that thing has been changed. While I'm here in this activities view, I also want to kind of mention the comments. So in your comments section, I could say anything here. So I could say, I will talk to the architect, okay, and just post that. If I post that, Okay. If I post that, that is kind of just a public comment. If Walt looks at his RFI view now and goes down to the activity, he sees that showing up. Okay, cool. The other thing that I could do is post private comments. In this case, it's going to be kind of a weird example, but let's say that I post to somebody else. In this case, it's just myself. And I say, did you see this yet? Do you have the appropriate attachments? Okay. I could post this, which then Walt would see, or I can make it private and post it, which is going to indicate it with a kind of a gray background. Now, when Walt refreshes his screen and looks at the comments, he does not see private comments that he is not privy to. Okay, so in this case, he doesn't see that. I could go in here and say at Walt, let's say, thanks, I'll get back to you soon. Okay, and then post, make it private, post that. Since Walt is part of the ats in the comment, I specifically made an at Walt, he will see my private. So a private comment is going to be between anybody that is the original poster of the comment and anybody that I at within that comment. A good common practice also, if I want to make private comments, I might say at Walt, blah, 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 did you see this? And then I could say CC at Josh. Okay, so now in this case, it's the same user, but let's say I said CC Casey or something like that. Then myself, Walt, and Casey would be the only users that could see this comment if I make it private. Okay, cool. Let me go up to the top here a little bit. The other thing that I want to do here is, let's say that I go back to my RFI log as Walt. I create a brand new RFI. I can say RFI 002, and I'll say this is a webinar RFI 2 question mark. Instead of simply sharing that, I could click the little drop down here and workflow this RFI. So this might be a common practice that you have subcontractors or contractors do. As they're creating information, I immediately want them to workflow everything that they do over to a certain process. I set up this review process or review workflow, and I'll start that. For Walt now, he's created that and he's workflowed it. He can now see a workflows box under here that shows the appropriate visual steps and the detailed steps of that. And if Josh goes back to his log, he sees RFI number 2, clicks on that, he'll see a workflow banner at the top of his RFI. This is because that same RFI, RFI number 2, which is common on both screens here, is now waiting for Josh's action. So he can go to view workflow. He sees that right here, and he can take his action, provide whatever response he wants. Okay, so it looks good. Take the action. It's going to move over to step 2. If Walt looks at his screen, that's also now showing up as step 2. Okay, so anybody that has the access can go ahead and create a record, let's say an RFI. So Walt goes ahead and creates an RFI. He can share the RFI. He could have workflowed the RFI. Either way, it's going to get over to me, and I can take my appropriate action. And again, we're only seeing the data that is common to each other in our views. The other thing that I want to do very quickly here is, let's say that I do have a workflow in my court. It came over from Walt. I can update the information like I've done with these different fields. That's all fine. But I do have a question on that. So I'm going to close the workflow. I'm going to go down to action items, and I'm actually going to send Walt back an action item. Say you know, provide attachments. I'm going to assign this to Walt just by looking at that. You can always see who else is in the system by using that green check. I'll give them a due date of, let's say, tomorrow, and I say, you forgot attachments. Please provide. In this view now, I can save and share. Whenever you assign an action item, it's automatically going to share that to the person that it's assigned to. So if I was looking to share this to Walt, I don't need to save and share. If I was looking to save or share this with my superior or something like that, so we can keep tabs on, or he or she can keep tabs on what's going on in my projects, I can share. But for this case, I'm just going to save this. Okay. And now I'm going to refresh Walt's screen on this RFI, and I'll go down, and I do see that I have one action item now showing up. It says provide attachments. He can go in here and edit, mark that thing complete, obsolete, whatever the axis is. You'll also notice that Walt, when he clicks on this little indicator up here, this is showing all the action items that have been assigned to him across his projects. He can see that he has one that is due this week, the thing that we just assigned to him, and he can actually go to his running list of all the action items across his projects, or specifically across documents on the project, and see all the action items that are looking for his attention. Okay, so he can click on that, see all the details that we've provided over to him, but it's very easy for him to view that through that action items way. He could have also gone to the My page and see that he has a little indication here that one action item due this week. He could jump over to that. If he looks at the action item, it is linked to the RFI that we are referencing, so we could click onto that. Now, again, we're both back to that RFI view. We're reviewing that same information. As you're collaborating on documents, another piece that I want to show here is this read receipt. So I can always hover over any of these people's faces, and it'll show me the last time somebody viewed this information. So in this case, I can see Walt from Superior viewed this thing just a couple minutes ago while I'm working with him. So if I send information out, kind of what we talked about from an email side, a lot of times you can't really tell, did somebody view that? Are they editing information? What's going on with that email I just sent? In Project Team, when you create information and share it to others, you have an idea of when they're accessing that information, if at all, and if not, I can bring that up to them. But also, based on that activity that we looked at, what activities are they taking to view that information? The final thing, or one of the final things that I want to show here is, okay, so we've got lots of ways to collaborate in the system, whether that's sharing, whether that's workflowing, viewing activity, etc. The other thing that I can do as, let's say, Walt, I have access to go in here and add or edit the subject. So I'll say the subject 002, something different, okay? So I'm going to create that or update that subject field, and now on Josh's side, he can see that that has an edit on it. That's something different. What you can do as any user is go to the view as of. So I can say view as of, and I can go to a previous time and day for this information. So I'm going to say 3:35, which is just a couple minutes ago. Now, as Josh, I'm viewing this same exact RFI, what it looked like a couple minutes ago before Walt made that change. And I can see the subject looked a little bit different. It didn't have that something different on it. It just looked like RFI 002. So in this case, if I had multiple screens up or whatever, I can compare that data, see what's wrong or see what has been edited. Maybe it shouldn't have been edited. Go back to the current view, edit that back, and take that information away. Okay, so even though people may have access to fields that you've given them to, you always have the ability to go back in time, view what that thing looked like at that previous time and date, and then remake the appropriate changes. Okay. On this webinar so far, we've spent a lot of time on forms, specifically my RFI form. However, there's lots of forms that you can interact with on your different projects. I talked about system forms versus custom forms and what access Walt versus Josh would have on those. You can also do things like your folders. So I can maybe create a folder here, and let's call this my internal documents. And I'll create another folder called subcontractor documents. Okay, and save that. Maybe my subcontractor documents, I do want to share that with my Superior subcontracting organization. Okay, now when Walt looks at his files, he has access to that folder. Okay, so it's a good file sharing area as well. I could go into internal documents. I think somewhere on my desktop here, I do have a couple, so I can go ahead and add those. Okay, so now in the project files for my internal documents, I have 3. My subcontractor documents, I have 0. If Walt refreshes his screen, he just has access to that folder for subcontractor documents, which means he has 0. I can go as deep as I want in here. So let's call this general documents, and then just say like progress info or something. Okay, since I added those two folders within a folder that Walt has access to, when Walt goes into that folder, he's going to have those folders. So if you give access to a parent level folder, the person that you give access to will have access to, going down to the children folders or files. And then the last thing that I want to mention here on this webinar, I'm not necessarily going to show it, but if we went into the reporting area and created an RFI report, the RFI report might have access. So if Josh creates the RFI report, he could create a report based on all the fields that he has access to on the project. If Walt creates an RFI report, he would only have access to the fields that he has access to. If Josh creates a report using all of the different fields or columns that he has access to and shares that report to Walt, Walt will only see the data that he has access to in that case. Okay, so even reporting is going to respect all the permissions that you have set up on your different projects and only show the information appropriate to each user. All right. So like I mentioned, that was a little bit different of a webinar than we have done in the past because I had two screens up. Hopefully that all made sense and you could kind of visualize working on two computers or maybe two offices or whatever it might be. But that is kind of what I wanted to show today. In closing here, we have 2 webinars per month going on till the end of the year. You can always sign up for those webinars by going to our resources page, check out the webinar schedule. It's also a place where we've uploaded any recorded webinars that we've done so far. So if you've missed any along the way, lots of really good resources there, and you can watch each one of those between 40 and an hour long. What are your next steps? So depending on where you are, this is mostly for those people that are joining these webinars that are not yet users, lots of options. You can continue just to learn about project management versus project collaboration systems. Go ahead and download our buyer's guide. Evaluate more about Project Team. I encourage you to go over to that webinars area and rewatch any webinars that you missed. We also have a ton of other videos on the site and brochures, et cetera, that kind of list different features that you have access to. And then if you're ready to, certainly you have the option to speak to one of our product specialists. Go ahead and call in. They'll take you to kind of a customized demo, kind of tailored to your needs to understand all that. And then if you want to just follow us along on LinkedIn, we always are posting news, updates, trends, webinar updates, recorded webinars, all that good stuff on that platform as a professional social media site. So go ahead and check that out.